What's happening, everyone, and welcome back to the Pathways to Success. On the show today, I have Christian Lehinger, who is the CEO of Connected Mind, a mental health assessment tool designed to help healthcare providers diagnose and treat patients for common mental health conditions. Christian, welcome to the podcast, man. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you to our live studio audience. Vic Calabrese, what's happening, man?
Hey, how are you?
Christian, so we can get a little bit more context as far as what you're doing today. Tell us a little bit more about Connected Mind.
So Connected Mind is a mental health triage tool. So one of the things we discovered, I've actually been in the mental health space for quite a while now, that most of the time when providers are dealing with mental health, they look at individual conditions. So maybe they think you have, depression, so they give you a depression screening, or maybe they think you have anxiety, or they give you an anxiety screening. But what we realize is that all of these conditions are connected or comorbid to each other. And so if you have one mental health condition, you have a 50% chance of having two or more. And so we developed a way that without having to pre-diagnose the patient, you can just give them a tablet and we'll figure out what needs to be screened for. And then we'll actually build a personalized assessment just for that patient. And the reason that's so important is because most of this stuff is caught in primary care doctor's office, and they don't have time to deal with this. If they were to administer this in a traditional way, they'd be administering between 150 and 200 questions. That's not realistically possible, and still practice medicine, the traditional medicine that they need to practice. So with our tool, most people can be screened in under a minute.
Wow.
And then for those that actually do trigger something more severe, then we dig and figure out what's going on with them.
And how did you get the idea for this particular product?
So I actually had another product that I had built back in 2011, ended up selling it to private equity, and they did what private equity tends to do, which is boot out all the founders and then tank the company. So after all that happened, I realized that this is still an area that I'm really passionate about. And so took a whole fresh approach, hired a team of psychologists, to put together the instrument and design the whole thing based around what we knew, because we wanted to save people's lives.
Wow. So what's the current state of the business? What do you hope for it to become? Tell us all that.
So right now we're still in startup mode. It takes a long time to get these things launched, just because there's so much that needs to be done. You write the instrument, you test it in the field, then you have to get your validation studies. We're 2/3 of the way through our validation study. We're working with a group that's housed out of UNT. So some psychologists over there are helping us do our validation, and we're almost through that process. So the product is essentially baked and ready to go.
Yeah.
And we've got it launched out there in about 30 clinics. And then we also just launched a version for schools. So we're now in 30 different schools. Anecdotally, 2 days ago, one of our schools caught a suicidal student because of our test.
Seriously?
Yeah, so they were able to intervene. Obviously, we don't know any details, but we know that they were given all the information they needed, that the student was actually had the intention to harm themselves, so we were able to catch them. So that's very exciting. But we're in 30 schools. We want to get out into a lot more. We're just starting the process of market penetration, so it's early, it's fun, but that's what we're up to.
So how do people check out the project? If investors are interested, people want to lend their talents to help further the agenda, like how do people check it out?
Connectedmind.me.
Connectedmind.me.
Correct.
Awesome. We'll make sure to have that in the show notes. So
Sure.
So awesome. Well, Christian, I appreciate you sharing that. And what I want to talk about next is your story. And based on kind of what we initially discussed, there's so much there that I think our audience can learn from. And I started this podcast because I loved learning from the best practices of other individuals. And I saw that if I started applying them into my own life, I could generate similar things. So let's start with a genesis of you. So tell us a little bit about your career history. I know it's always been leadership and tech. Walk us through that.
I could start very young, but I think I'll start kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
So I had my daughter was born, my first daughter. I have 4 kids.
Okay.
And that part of the reason why I became an entrepreneur is because I had to feed 4 kids.
Yeah.
So, but my first daughter was born, and she actually had necrotizing enterocolitis, which basically means her colon was dying. And so she had to go into the NICU for 3 months and then had a lot of severe medical problems. And in that whole process, I realized that there was a big gap in medicine, that there was a real need there. And I decided to actually move into that field. I was doing, strictly IT before that. And I saw that need. So I ended up moving into work at the hospital. And in that process, I realized that all the things that they were working on to connect things together and make things better had a lot of gaps and holes that it wouldn't work. And so I came up with an idea and ended up patenting I can't speak today, patenting the idea for interoperability or connectivity. And that kind of led from one thing to another, getting involved in medical clinics, ended up running 11 primary care clinics, it's called an MSO or management service organization, use those to develop software. And then we would test the software live in those clinics to figure out what would actually work. How would people react to things? And, that kind of led to the mental health space, where we realized there was an even bigger gap than what we had seen in a lot of the traditional medicine side of things. And that's what led into, dealing with mental health. Plus, my ex-wife actually was misdiagnosed by a doctor as having bipolar disorder when she was not bipolar, and he put her on some really strong medication called Lamictal, which caused a lot of real serious problems for her. She was basically catatonic almost for three years. It was really bad. And then through a series of events, we had written the first tool, and we found out through that tool that she was not bipolar. And she actually had a genetic mutation, which I'm not going to go into super nerd land here, but got her off the medicine, got her onto the right medicine, and it made a really big impact for her. And so I was dealing with mental health in my own family and dealing with mental health in the field, and one thing led to another. So, and we could go down a lot of different paths depending on what you want to know.
So this space is something you are deeply connected to, then.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm really proud about is in our last tool, we saved over 2,000 people's lives that checked the box.
Wow.
I'm going to kill myself. And in this product that I'm working on right now with Connected Mind, even though it's just in its infancy, we've caught 1,300 people with suicidal ideation or thoughts of suicide. And we've caught 35 that actually mark the box, I'm going to kill myself. So that's something that I know I can go to my grave knowing that I've helped to impact the lives, of a lot of people that wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the product that we developed.
Yeah.
So
amazing.
Yeah.
So which was the first sort of big entrepreneurial success for you?
Well, I started during the hospital process. I actually started an IT company. Ended up having it for about 15 years. Ended up selling it. During that process, when we were talking about running the medical clinics, we were also running an IT company at the same time. And then the big success was the private equity deal that we did with my old tool. It was called AssessMD, and we're able to sell, a piece of that to the private equity group, infuse a bunch of capital, and that thing was going pretty well, actually. And obviously there were some changes in healthcare in that led to the private equity thing that I was telling you about before. But yeah, but my first success was it was called Paragon Support, and it was an IT company. So
let's talk about that piece, which business it was. I believe you were achieving great financial success. You had like 87 employees, and you looked successful on the outside, but you just weren't congruent on the inside. Walk us through that experience.
So all of those companies that I was talking about, we had put under a holding company, and we had 85 employees actually. Doctors, we had 11 doctors. Everything was going really well. And on paper, technically, I was a multimillionaire. Life was going really good from a financial perspective. And the problem is that my life was just not in alignment, meaning that I was working, 14 hours a day. I was always looking to just be a little bit better, a little more automated, a little more successful. And then I'll be able to do all these things I really want to do in my life, like take my kids on, trips around the world, or, learn about this or that. And I was really focused on having certain things in place before I could be who I wanted to be. But my life was not in alignment, and so things were just not working. It was like, even though on the outside I was successful, I could never quite achieve that next little thing that I just need to have happen for me, in order to feel like I was actually where I needed to be. And because of that, when everything fell apart for me, essentially I lost everything. I lost my business. I lost everything I owned. I lost my wife. I lost everything. And so I had to retool my life at that point. And I really learned about a concept, which I call be, do, have, which is first be who you want to be. First be the person that you want to be. And then the doing comes from there. And then the having comes from that. And I had everything exactly backwards in my old life. I was trying to have certain things so that I could do the things I wanted, so that I could be the person that I wanted to be. And it just doesn't work that way. And when I really understood that I had it all completely backwards, I spent a lot of time meditating. I spent a lot of time walking, reading, thinking about what it was that I wanted to be at my core. What was the core of me? What was my vision? What was my mission? What were my core values? What was the thing that made me me, and the legacy that I wanted to leave? And once I figured that out for myself, then I was able to actually say, okay, based on that, this is the life that I want to have. And I started to build the life that I wanted to have based on that being, so that I was building a life that was in alignment with who I am and who I want to be. And ultimately, the having comes from that. So, yeah.
Interesting. So let's say somebody's listening right now and they feel their life is not in alignment. And I understand the be, do, have, but what do you think is the first step in changing that be piece?
I think the first thing is to get still, get quiet, get alone, and just really spend the time to listen. Not think, not write notes, but just be quiet. Just listen. Listen to what your insides are telling you. And then from that, ask yourself the question, who am I? Who do I want to be? What is my core? And then from there, it just kind of happens. Does that make sense?
Who, after this process, who did you decide and come to know you wanted to be?
For me, my vision is be free, and my mission is to bring freedom. And so that's my entire life. That's what it's wrapped around in every facet of my life, even Connected Mind, which is about saving and improving lives through mental health testing. That's part of that. It's bringing freedom to people that are trapped in this world that they can't get out of with mental health.
Yeah.
And so it's in alignment with who I am. When I have conversations with people, when I talk to people, I have a lot of people that I mentor, and they come to me with all these different thises and that's, and what about this and what about that? I'm like, okay, but who are you? Who do you want to be in this situation? And when they peel back, the answers just become obvious. I don't have to tell them things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I know it sounds ethereal, but it's just reality.
Yeah. And I believe I've experienced something very similar to that. And I know you're very good friends with Vic. Something I love about Vic is that he can take a vision and an idea and map it out in detail how to bring it into fruition. What did that piece look like for you? Once you got a sense of this new identity, how you wanted to be, what were your next set of actions?
So for me, when I really realized the core of who I was, I already knew what I wanted to do. I just didn't know that I knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that was, I had already been working in mental health. I had already had a passion for mental health. I had already seen a roadmap for how to make an impact in mental health. I just associated that to my past. So once I was free to really explore what I wanted, I just naturally knew that that's what I wanted to do, because I could clearly see how that was in alignment with who I am and how I could actually make an impact in that space. And so that's why I, continued down that path with mental health. So it was very clear for me. And that's not always the case with everybody. Sometimes people don't know, and sometimes they have to take chances and find out, does this feel good or does this not feel good?
Yeah.
And then when it doesn't feel good, move, adapt, change. Don't be afraid to peel things back. A lot of times our ego is what holds us back.
Yeah.
Because, and actually there's a great book by Ryan Holiday called Ego is the Enemy.
Ego's the enemy. Yeah.
Yeah, I
right,
love that book. But it really is the enemy. And if you just peel that ego back, then things just kind of naturally make themselves apparent. It either feels good or it doesn't, and you just adapt.
So in terms of so contrast the before and after. Like, what is life like now, living this way, in contrast to who you used to be?
Well, first of all, I have an amazing, supportive wife. I just got remarried, and
Congrats.
I have an amazing, supportive wife.
You just got married when I met you. At this
Yes,
stage, right?
yeah.
With the kilt, yeah.
Yeah, I was wearing a kilt. We just got back from Scotland. We got back from Scotland. But I have someone who's there and very supportive.
Yeah.
And when I wake up in the morning, usually I like to spend time meditating or just, preparing for the day. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes I wake up, rub my eyes, and go straight to the computer. But I'm very generous with myself. If things are working, it's great. If things aren't working, it's okay to admit that it's not working. And I think if I was to sum it all up in one little core concept, it's that I am really generous with myself. My self-talk is different. Like, you can do it, buddy. You got this. Or it's totally okay. You don't have to be perfect. It's just that internal self-talk is very different. And so, there's areas that I push myself in, like, for example, being on podcasts. I mean, I'm very gregarious and outgoing, but oddly enough, I don't, social things scare the hell out of me. And so, doing this is a stretch for me, but it's okay. So, I do it, and it feels good when I do it. So if it didn't, I wouldn't do it, and I would back off. So that's an example. So, yeah.
Something I see in entrepreneurs I interview on the podcast and people who've achieved great success is they're very self-aware of what they're good at, what they're bad at, what they like to do, and all these things. What would you consider to be your greatest strengths, your sort of gifts?
Well, I would say that I see the world in a way that I don't know many other people that see it the way I see it. You would hear the traditional out-of-the-box thinker. I don't even see the box most of the time. I don't know that I'm thinking outside the box because I wasn't even aware there was a box. I just have a way of recognizing patterns and seeing the inevitability in those patterns. Like, if you're to follow this path, this is where it leads to. And I'm just really good at that. And I'm a avid reader and student of history. So when I look at things that are happening, I have a tendency to filter them through historical patterns, and that just helps me to kind of get a sense of what's going to happen when certain things happen. So I'm very strategic because of that. So.
How did you first know that was a thing that you could use to your advantage?
Well, that's interesting. It's funny because I would say until I always felt like it was something I could use to my advantage.
Yeah.
But I saw it in a different way. I always saw it through the eyes of fighting. By the way, I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt, so my whole life I've been fighting.
Yeah.
And I always saw it through the eyes of fighting, like, I'm able to get the upper hand on this strategy by playing from the bottom and making them think that they're dominant, and the whole entire time I'm setting them up for a trap. I was like, yeah, that's so great. But now I see it in a totally different way. I don't see it through the eyes of fighting. I see it through the eyes of, this is something that can benefit the world. And so it's kind of changed my perspective on it.
Yeah.
And so only recently did I ever see this as like a gift. Before, I saw it as a skill that I'd mastered. Now I see it as a gift, a part of who I am. Does that make any sense? What I'm saying?
No, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, jiu-jitsu is like problem solving, right?
Oh,
it's
very much
highly
so.
strategic.
Playing chess with your body, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you recommend our listeners to become more self-aware themselves?
Interesting. It goes back to what I said before. It's really, and I'm going to say this in kind of a direct way. Shut up and listen. Yeah. Just listen. Just sit there and don't talk. Just listen. And if you listen, you can start to feel your own body. You can start to sense what's going on around you. Just take 5 minutes and don't say anything. And that action alone will start you on the path to really opening up and being more self-aware.
Love it.
So,
Christian, you've experienced success, you've experienced failure, you know some things that work and some things that don't. What do you know for sure about successfully starting and running a business?
I can tell you that the definition of success for me has radically changed. So when you say successfully running a business, I don't see that as hitting the $100 million mark, selling out to private equity, walking away with millions of dollars. I don't see success like that. I see success as the business being an extension of who you are and in alignment with who you are. And there's a saying that I learned, and it says, without integrity, nothing works. Let's change that from without alignment, nothing works. If your life isn't in alignment. So if something's an extension of you, then what it is that you want out of that will work if it's in alignment with you. So that's success for me, is being aligned to what you want.
Love it. What else would you actually soda? I know that was just something that we captured like right before, but as you and Vic were talking about it, I was like, that works. That needs to be captured. What is soda?
Soda: simplify, optimize, delegate, and then automate. So a lot of people try to automate processes and come up with these very sophisticated processes. And I know, because I was one of them, and I was so proud of the 18-page flow sheet that I made. But the fact of the matter is, everything is about getting small and getting simple. And if you can get small and get simple, and then you can optimize those things, and then you can test them by delegating them out to somebody else. And if what you think is supposed to happen actually does happen, then go ahead and make the robots do it instead of the humans.
How do you know when you need to delegate something versus do it yourself?
For me, I would say in the past, if I wanted something done right, I did it myself. And now I see that as a complete breakdown, actually. If you can't delegate pretty much everything, then you're more of a technician. You're not really an owner. You're not really an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is somebody who figures out. Now, there's exceptions to every rule, so please don't take this as the gospel. But if you can't delegate, if you can't make it happen through others, you're not really successful. You're not really making it happen. You're just muscling.
Wow. So, yeah, I'm definitely I feel much more of a freelancer than I am a business owner. And Vic really pointed that out. He's like, you got some good stuff here. You've identified value, but you can't build a business doing what you're doing. So I am really curious about that. What kind of advice would you have for me?
Well, the first thing is, what do you want?
Yeah.
And if you want a scalable business, then you really need to start working on that process of figuring out what makes you special and seeing if you can duplicate that in others. And then once you do that, it starts to scale, it starts to work, then you build things around it. But if that's not what you want, and you do want to be a freelancer and you do want to do those things, then you're already doing it. So do it.
Yeah. One of the things that I learned pretty early on, maybe 13 years ago, one of my core values was freedom. I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do with whoever and how I wanted to do it. And that ultimately led me down the path of entrepreneurship, right? And for me, I want to be free doing something that I love to do. And it was this podcast that put me on this path where I could monetize these things. But even up to now, it's still me kind of doing the work. I learned that I could create for myself, and the way I was able to monetize is creating for others. People seem to want me to do for them what I've done for myself from a branding perspective, from a content perspective, and all that. So we could definitely take that offline in terms of like what I need to do next. But yeah, the speaking is something, man, I feel like I was born to do that. Right?
Yeah.
That's never going to go away. I'm always going to do that. But I do want to build a business that I can grow and can run without me, right? So yeah, there's definitely points that I need to work on there. What else would you want our listeners to share in terms of successful business lessons?
In broad generalities, back to that, build it in alignment with who you want to be. And if it is a business and you are, trying to grow, using the soda principle.
Yeah.
The other principle that I like to talk about is the MORE principle, or the scientific method plus a little extra, which is measure, observe, repeat, and evolve. So if you're measuring the things that you're simplifying, if you're measuring the things that you're optimizing, then you can you can repeat them, and then you can evolve from them. So that's another core. I would say those three things are pretty much a solid path to moving forward in creating a business that's quote unquote successful or scalable. So
gotcha. Okay, Christian. So I want to close with life lessons. So you have defined your definition of success, which is living in alignment. Is that correct?
yes.
So do you have any habits, routines, best practices that you go through every day to set you up for that definition of success?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
And I don't always do these things. There's times when I give myself a break. And it's like almost like a test, like eating bad food, feeling bad so you know you don't want to do it kind of thing.
Yeah.
But for me, my habits are I get up, I always make the bed. That's the rule. You make the bed, period. I get up and I meditate. I either use Headspace. I just got a new tool called a Muse, which it's an EEG, so I can actually make the birds chirp, which is really exciting. Then once I do that, then I journal. I have a little book called The Hero's Journey that I write my hero's journey in. And it's usually about one page, and it's just whatever comes to my head. I literally just write it down. There's no right, there's no wrong. And then I eat, and then I make a list of the things that I want to do that day, and then I get on it.
And then you get on it.
Yeah.
How does planning, goal setting, visualizing work for you?
I really try now. Obviously, I have big picture things that I'm working on. I tend to write on a whiteboard, like things that I can't get done in a single day. But for me, I really try to look at each day as that's where I set my goals for the day. I obviously have the big picture goals and visualization and stuff like that for the year.
Yeah.
But I try to keep that really super simple, maybe 2 or 3 things. But on a daily basis, that's where I'll stop as I'm drinking my coffee and I'm writing down what I'm going to do for the day. I really try to just pause and think, okay, what can I really accomplish today? What do I want to accomplish today? And I keep it really small and simple. A lot of people have these really complex goals and methodologies around that. I just don't find that works for me at all. Yeah. I'm try to stay as present as I can. So that's how I do it.
So you're a jiu-jitsu black belt.
Yes.
So you're into fitness and wellness and things like that.
Yes.
What was the most impactful lesson you've learned about improving your overall well-being last year?
Oh, interesting. Last year was really hard for me from a physical perspective because I have a really bad back problem.
Oh, okay.
Doing CrossFit, I ended up hurting my back. And so I had to completely adapt my entire jiu-jitsu game. And I gained a little bit of weight last year. So I just realized that I had become very myopic in my jiu-jitsu game, which is funny because jiu-jitsu has a tendency to mirror life. And so I had gotten a little bit stuck at the end of last year. And so what I decided to do with both jiu-jitsu and life was just give myself a break. So I actually decided to remodel part of my house and not do anything for about 3 weeks, just to create space. And then in my jiu-jitsu game, I decided to do whatever I wanted. I didn't need to win. I just wanted to have fun and play. So during that process, I decided that first of the year I was going to go plant-based. A lot of people have been talking about it.
Yeah.
I'm not into the whole, I'm not doing it to save the animals. I'm doing it for health. And I decided that the thing that I'm the best at in jiu-jitsu, which I'm not going to go nerd on you here, but it's my half guard peel over game.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop doing it completely. So for this entire year, I'm not allowed to do the thing that I'm best at, and I've gone plant-based. So in the first month, I've already lost 13 pounds.
Awesome.
And I've started to figure out how to transition in my jiu-jitsu game without using my secret sauce.
Yeah.
So that's fun.
Awesome.
Yeah. But on the fitness side, my back is feeling a lot better.
So
My
the
body's
plant-based
feeling a lot
things
better.
you're seeing measurable. Yeah, that's awesome.
Huge. My arthritis in my fingers is gone. It's really quite incredible. So,
Christian, what is the best life advice someone has given you that you've actually implemented and produced a result with it?
wow, you're asking me hard questions. Life advice that someone's given me that I've implemented. I would say it's the be, do, have.
Yeah.
That was from my life coach, Lori Link. She told me about that, and it took me a while to get it. And then when I got it and implemented it, that's where all the results came from. So,
I love it.
Yeah.
Close us out with anything else, Christian. Anything else you'd like to say to our listeners? And again, it's about helping people achieve the best versions of themselves, achieving success they want to. What else do you want to say?
I would say, just to repeat myself from before, just take some time, create a little bit of space, breathe. You don't always need to be talking. Your brain doesn't always need to be moving. And you'll be surprised what you come up with if you just breathe and take some time to listen to what's going on. So, and listen to your body.
Awesome. I love it, Christian. That was really awesome. Tell us how we can connect with you, follow you, support you. Tell us all that.
Okay, so our website for Connected Mind is connectedmind.me. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, Christian Lehinger. And I'm happy to connect with you that way. That's probably the best way to get me. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure to have all your contact information in the show notes as well. So Christian, this is amazing. Thank you for being on the show. Vic, thank you for this introduction. We're going to get you on the podcast next for sure.
All right, let's do it.
And everyone else, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Pathways to Success. As always, make sure to subscribe, comment, and share. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Pathways to Success.